Now, a best-selling novelist takes on war crimes. Jeffrey Brown has our latest addition to the NewsHour bookshelf.
In 2004, 400 people were rounded up from their homes in a village in Bosnia and buried alive in an old coal mine. But did this mass killing really happen? And if so, who were the perpetrators? Those questions must be decided at the International Criminal Court in the Netherlands. It's the setting for a new legal thriller titled Testimony, and a new setting for acclaimed author Scott Turow, the attorney and writer whose work has sold more than 30 million copies since his debut novel, Presumed Innocent. I'm not going to name all the other bestsellers, Scott, but it's nice to talk to you here.
Jeff, it's nice to talk to you.
You have left behind the fictional Kindle County, the setting that many of us are familiar with, that place is sort of familiar for a much broader palette.
Right.
Why?
You know, I just sort of accumulated a writer's bucket list, and one of the things years ago that I decided I would write about at some point is the International Criminal Court in The Hague, just because I'd never read anything set there.
So you started with the idea of the court.
I did,
Something
for sure.
Intrigued you about those kinds of trials?
I had been in The Hague in the year 2000, and had found myself at a party surrounded by a bunch of American lawyers who were saying, you got to write about this place. And unlike most times when people have ideas about Antilles Watch or their divorce, this sounded like it would actually make an interesting setting.
You have the legal background and you are an attorney. How much research goes into all of the stories that you write?
A lot. I'm a year off my usual cycle because I went to the Netherlands twice. I went to Bosnia once. I had a lot to learn about, first the court, even more to learn about the Roma people, and of course the Bosnian conflict, about which I was inexcusably ignorant.
So this is set in the aftermath of the Bosnian War.
Right.
It's about a group of Roma, often known as gypsies,
right,
who are still living there,
right,
or resettled there.
Yeah, resettled in the fictional world, resettled after the Bosnian War, driven out of Kosovo, and have chosen to live right near the American NATO bases in Bosnia, which were there for a decade after the war to sort of keep the peace.
So you have this big story, you have this history, but the way in, as always, is a particular character.
Right.
And in this case, a lawyer from Kindle County.
From Kindle County.
Yeah.
The former U.S. attorney in Kindle County.
A very successful man who, but is unfulfilled.
Right. Thrown his life up for grabs, says that he has never felt fully at home with himself, and that helps explain why he would be willing to leave the United States to work overseas.
And is that the way in for you, really?
What interested me was when I found that the United States Congress had passed a law called the U.S. Service Members Protection Act, which says that the president has authority to forcibly rescue any American serviceman charged before the International Criminal Court. So, of course, you know, the novelist says, good, conflict.
Yeah.
And so the idea of an American prosecutor investigating, among other suspects, American service members was immediately interesting.
Can't go into all the details of this plot here, but I mean, it's fair to say that the book continues what I think I can call your own complicated relationship to the law.
Yeah, I
you know,
would
as
say
a kind of both noble calling, but also the, what's the word, the tawdriness in some ways of the law.
There cannot be any greater challenge to the law than trying to adjudicate mass crimes like war crimes.
Yeah, I keep thinking in your work and in this one that most of us look at the legal system as a way to get at the truth. Is that, do you think of it as that, or as a way to get at a truth? Or what's going on there, and what is it that translates for you as a novelist?
Well, you know, I really think of the trial of a lawsuit as an exercise in history. And people are offering competing visions of what happened in the past. And the justice system is willing to accept either of those competing visions and to impose consequences as a result. When you think of it that way, it's a little bit startling, because we want to believe that there's one truth and therefore one justice, Whereas if you've practiced law as long as I have, you realize that there's actually a range of acceptable outcomes.
Yeah. Of course, truth these days is a kind of fraught concept, but it
yeah.
always has been, sounds like it always has been for you.
Well, it is in the courtroom, and it was frustrating for me as a prosecutor. When I wrote Presumed Innocent originally, I didn't say who'd committed the crime. And I had a long heart-to-heart with myself about, you know, the purpose of the mystery. And the one thing the mystery does is deliver to us a certainty that life and the courtroom very often can't.
Has that continued? Because I actually saw an interview where you said, I'm a big believer in the fact that all authors really write only one book.
Right. I think that's true. The older I get, the more I'm trying to figure out what the book is and why. I know that in a book like Testimony, issues of identity are enormously important. No character is fully at home. And I have a hard time isolating what it is in myself that makes me so fascinated with that theme, because I came from a normal upper middle class family. And yet, as I look back at my books, the uses of power, issues of identity, it's recurrent. It happens again and again.
Well, a lot of people continue to read your one book in its many forms, right?
Fortunately for me.
Good for you.
Grateful to all of them.
The new one is Testimony. Scott Turow, nice to talk to you.
Jeff,
Thank
it's
you.
good to talk to you, too.